Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to my review of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and really a review of the entire ACOTAR trilogy. I went into this trilogy wanting to see what all the hype was about. I like every once in a while to go outside my reading comfort zone, pick up a book that maybe doesn't necessarily speak to me, scream out to me, call my name. And certainly romance isn't the genre I find myself most frequently drawn to. But fantasy is, and this is probably the most famous fantasy series that's come out in the last 5 to 10 years in terms of copies sold. So you know what? I want to see what the hype was about. First two books, if you watch those reviews, I was pretty positive on. I think the first one was a good time. It wasn't a literary masterpiece, and I thought the second one improved on the first one in most ways. That being said, because I liked the first two so much, I think I went to the third one with a more critical eye. Literary critic Owen has come to play, and guess what? He don't play nice. Or do I? We'll see. I do have a lot of complaints. Some of them are nitpicky, and some of them are more like, I feel very ascended. I feel very wise. I feel very clever in terms of these things that jumped out to me as I was reading this. I'll say just as the positives, get some of the more general positives out of the way. It's probably just as good as the first book. I would say that. I think I'm just more critical for this one. I think that the general world is fine. The characters are good and layered. It's just where it gets bogged down is that writing style and some of the writing tropes that Maas uses, specifically in the fantasy genre. Because I feel like I have a little bit more authority to speak on that and what makes good fantasy, maybe other than the romance. Because, like I said in the first book, I think it was... relationship stuff was a very, very strong. Fantasy stuff was kind of like very generic, very snooze territory. The second book kind of reversed that a little bit. I don't know if Reese and Fayre really did it for me in terms of the why. I think they're a fine couple. But the fantasy stuff grabbed me a little bit more. I thought it was a little bit more concrete. I could grab onto it. It made sense to me. The third one, I almost thought the fantasy stuff was enraging at times because I think it's like this. For those of you that are fans of fantasy, you know the difference between hard magic and soft magic. Hard magic is magic that has set rules. It's explained. It only can be used a certain way, and people that use magic, it's you're getting smarter with how you can use it. There's techniques and stuff like that, and you can't really break the rules of what you can do. If this is a magic that lets you grow trees, you're not going to blow up the sun. It's just not going to happen. It just doesn't work like that. Versus soft magic is like magic. It's magic. What does it do? Well, whatever we need it to do, depending on how powerful you are, right? A famous example of that is Lord of the Rings. What can Gandalf do? What can't he do? Right? We don't really know, but he's a wizard, so like he's a very powerful being, and he does magic, right? And there are benefits to both. Some people prefer to have rules because they think it like sometimes soft magic is too like, well, if the plot needs it, he can do whatever he wants. But soft magic is kind of a little bit more fairy tale, a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more mysterious and powerful and otherworldly. And I feel like Maas in her fantasy writing kind of straddles the line between both. I think this is a world with a lot of soft magic. It really does whatever we need it to do in the plot. But she tries to explain it as if it were hard magic. She tries to make nonsense magic that is very vague and very like the power of your heart can let you do magical things. But I'm going to give you an explanation as to why it works. And the problem with that is it gives the feeling of you're really making it up as you go. Because a lot of the rules that come to play in this book, the third book of the trilogy, were not set up in the first book, and most of them were not even set up in the second book. There's no hint that these things were possible, which I think is a mistake in storytelling. I think it's actually a weakness. And let me give you some examples. I think the one that sticks out the most in this book because of how important it is plot-wise would be all the stuff with the cauldron. It was introduced in the second book as kind of like this world-ending weapon, right? It can only be counteracted by the book, but they tried the book and it didn't quite work out the way they wanted. wanted it to. And just in general, Hybern, the King Hybern, I never really got a full grasp of his character, other than he's just like evil king guy who does really unexplained magic things. And actually, before I get to my example, I feel like this book has a lot of issues in terms of setting up false tension. A lot of these magic rules that I'm about to give, like some of the examples, are only created in the moment to create tension, in which we can have a plot twist to kind of undo the tension that was that was artificially created, like a plot twist to save the day. I'm dropping my pen. So our heroes like win the day, if that makes sense. So for example, we're talking about Hybern's powers. He can like cleave through wards, right? He's the spell breaker, even though I thought Fairy was a spell breaker or whatever, but his powers, like, he could cut through any spell. It's like one part of the story, they break into the city of stars, and it's like, how do they do that? Well, it's like Hybern found the spell. He found the spell to break the wards. It's like, oh no, I didn't know that we had those set up specifically in the part of the library where you're talking about, and he cleaved through them, but he never uses that again. He used his spell to break into this hidden city that no one found for millions of years, just to send like 3 goons in, and everyone's like, oh no, we've lost. Everyone's gonna think we're weak. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting plot point. The city it's gonna be war in the city. He just never goes back there again. He never really uses that power again, just so it could set up that moment of, oh, conflict in our city, and then they solve the conflict, never brought up again. Then the other thing is the cauldron, right? So in this book, it's bringing the book to the cauldron didn't work the way they thought it would. So they're using the book now to figure out how to destroy the cauldron. And then I didn't understand the climax of the book, what they were going to do when they got to the cauldron again. And they made it this thing where it's like, if you're made, the cauldron makes too. So if you're there, you can destroy it. And it's like, I thought we knew that with Fairy before, and now we're just like repeating it, but it's also different because she's not using the book. The book is just you just learn from the book now. So then Fairy gets there and she gets like sucked into the cauldron, and like she's like see through the cauldron, and then somehow it blows up. But if it blows up, it's gonna blow up the world. Like, what do you like? I got really confused at the end there, and this is a huge spoiler for those of you that haven't read the book. I don't know why you're watching this. After they destroy the cauldron, someone needs to sacrifice themselves to bring it back. Like, I don't know where that came from, and I don't know, maybe I just missed it, but the fact that like Reese sacrifices himself after the big bad is done, after the nuclear bomb is disarmed, he sacrifices himself in a moment of no tension, just to bring it back, because like it's like, oh well, if we leave the nuke undetonate or unarmed, the whole world's gonna blow up. So he's like, we gotta do it, Fairy, and he dies, and it's just to make the moment of, oh no, he's dead. Oh, and then like literally, this is infuriating to me. The High Lords come up and they say, we can't bring him back to life, Fairy. He's a High Lord. It's not like you where you were human. We turned you into a Fae. We can't bring him back to life. It's impossible. Half a page later, they're like puking globules of light and feeding it to him, and they all bring him back to life. Like, did this guy just like not get the memo that like that's something that you can do? Like, why did he not know? And they immediately did. It's just like, actually, you can't do that. Then all his buddies come up behind him like, yeah, actually, we can do it pretty easily, in fact. And to no sacrifice of our own, because even though we're giving more of our power away, we don't get any weaker, apparently. We're not even concerned about it. And I did like that moment just for the fact that like it allows Tamlin to like be the bigger man or not really bigger man, because he's kind of a character, right? But he allows he brings back Reese, even though he hates him, just because he wants to see Fairy happy. We'll get to more on Tamlin later, but I just thought that was manufactured, so we had the tension of him being dead, him being brought back to life with the Tamlin moment. It's very clear that Maas just wanted that relationship moment, which I feel like is a running theme of this book, and then used the fake fantasy MacGuffin to create that. And then another smaller example in this book is the Faebane, right? Fairy is working with Hybern, just like she was trapped in the spring court or whatever. And all of a sudden, I lost my powers because they were using this powder into my apples. What? There's powder that could suck away all your magic Why wasn't everybody using that? Why wasn't like Amarantha in the first book like using like the dusty powder in everyone's soup? I don't like, you know what I mean? And it's brought up and it's this tension, and it does make a great moment. One of my favorite parts of this book is when she's depowered, her and Lucian are on the run. I did like that part. But then it has like the big reveal moment in the center of the book where a character who I had no idea who the heck they were emerges from the shadows and says, I am a great scientist. I invented the antidote to this powder that was introduced to you nary but 100 pages ago. So it's not like a new threat in this book. It's really neutralized fairly quickly because they're supposed to be like, oh, badass moment. You found the cure. You found the cure. That's so cool of you. You solve, Maas introduces problems in this book and then solves them so quickly just to give our heroes a win that it's really a waste of time. Because then it's like she has the antidote to this Feyebane, but then she's sure to say, oh, but the weapons are still dangerous because if they're tipped with it, you're going to get stabbed and you're still going to lose your power, so you shouldn't get stabbed still. It's like you could have just not introduced that, and it's like, yes, getting stabbed is bad. I would have agreed with you. And that's another problem just of the writing style of this book. Is Maas alternates between reiterating things that are very, very obvious to anybody with any context clues, any context clues ability, I guess you would say, versus using her writing style to explain things that make no sense. And they make less sense when she explains them. So like, for example, one of her favorite lines in this book is, and I don't know why this bothered me so much in this book, is Feyre saying, and then I realized, as like a stinger to the end of either chapters or paragraphs or like moments. So for example, it'd be like something like Nesta, right? And her building relationship with Cassian, and they're obviously trying to set the spin-offs or whatever. There'll be a moment where it's like Cassian's in battle, he's really wounded, and it'll be like Nesta looked at him, and for the first time she didn't say a quip. She just stared at him and she put her arm on his shoulder. Obviously, as readers, oh, she's starting to care about him. She's not being as cold. She's not being as as mad. She's starting to care for him. She's worried about his safety. Very obvious because you literally just told us that. But then she'll add a line that then from Feyre's perspective that says, and then I realized she's starting to care about him. As like a one-liner quip to end it off. It's like, yeah, I know you just described that. And then I realized maybe Cassian was growing on her. Maybe she was, or then it'll be on the other side, and it's just like all the time and then I realized, or it'll be the flip side, the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Then she realizes something that makes no sense with what you just told me. It'll be like Elaine starts having a seizure, and she's like writhing on the ground, she's screaming in pain, and then I realized. The cauldron has given her a gift, the gift to see into the future. She is a seer. She can see in the future through all timelines. What? That's what you got from that? It's just like, it would make more sense if the simple change of a character other than Feyre telling her this. Like if Amaran's like, I'm an eldritch being, I've seen this before, this is a seer, the cauldron gave her this power. Then Feyre would be like, huh? That would be the moment. Instead of being like Feyre figures it out in her head. So she's either the dumbest person alive in this book or like 10 steps ahead of us. And I feel like it can't be both ways. It gives me a little bit of whiplash, but I just hate that line. And then I realized, like, just trust the meat of your story. Trust your context clues. If you're setting it up, I promise we'll pick it up. And then also on the flip side of that, don't use it as a crutch to jump to conclusions that really make no sense. And it's just, I just found it very frustrating, and the fact that it's used so many times, every time it popped up, I clocked it, and I was immediately judging up whether, like, which end of the spectrum it was. Instead, if you used it just like 2 or 3 times, I probably wouldn't have even noticed it. And then going on from there, another writing style nitpick thing is, or before I get to that, I guess, one of the strongest parts of this book, I think, is the relationship stuff. I think it's the most interesting part of the story, right? The fantasy stuff, it was also generic, and I really wasn't interested in the plot, and especially like big battle scenes. It's not what I'm here for. One of the most fantastic parts of the story was when all the High Lords were meeting, the door gets kicked open, and it's Tamlin. Tamlin's standing there, he has a bone to pick. Ooh! And that scene where he comes in hot, he starts yelling at her, he's like doing digs at her. It was so glorious. This is the build-up we've been waiting for. It's Tamlin book 1, it's Rhys book 2, it's the confrontation of everything that happened to these characters in the same room, and there's tensions of other like high lords with big personalities. They're all fighting each other. It's a tense situation. Oh, I literally I went like, whoo! That's what I had to do when Tamlin entered the room. That's what this book should have been about. First of all, Tamlin, that was his only good scene in the entire book. He was barely in it for the rest of it. That's what this book really should have been about. It should have been about the culmination of the relationship, Tamlin, the confrontation between Feyre and Tamlin. They should have talked more. Even when she was in the Spring Court, they didn't really talk that much. Getting that out of the way, I think that was a wasted opportunity, but that scene was amazing. However, outside of the Tamlin parts, or even after like the initial juicy part, there was a very repetitive nature to like outside characters. They make fun of Feyre. They say she's a human freak or whatever. Then it's just like the repetitive writing of her friends are roaring in fury. Everyone's roaring in this book. I hate that. That's what everybody sounds like in this book? Really? I don't think so. And then Rhys will be like, say that about my mate one more time and you're fucking toast. And then they say it again, and then he just says that again, and they just keep going back and forth forever. It's really quite atrocious. And it's just, that conversation was repeated at least 400 times for this book. Someone says, Feyre, you're dumb because you're a woman. And Rhys goes, don't talk to my mate like that. My friends roar in fury. I'm strong as my own. We know. The first 2 books, we know. Can't just everyone just like shut up, all right? And it just takes tens and tens of pages of that same interaction over and over and over and over and over again. I just want Tamlin to be like, yo, why did you betray me? I'm roaring with fury. Like, he can roar. He's half bear. He can roar. These people with wings, they're not roaring. I'm telling you, they're not roaring. They're yelling. They're yelling or they're screaming, and the cops are coming after me. Can you hear the sirens? I've gone too far. Lock me up. Anyway, the sirens have disappeared. But I found that a little bit annoying. That really stood out to me in that scene, but it's really just like, we get it. All the friends love each other. They want to defend each other with their lives. They're so badass. A lot of the characterizations, well, I think each character is unique, is individual. I think Azriel really stands out in this book as a very strong character, where I felt in the second book I didn't understand what the heck he was about. But we don't need to reiterate everything. We don't need to reiterate everyone's character tropes, how defensive they are of their family, how close they are, how powerful Feyre is, how defensive Rhys is, how angry Tamlin is, how angry Nesta is, how scared Elaine is. These characters have been set up. It's the 3rd book in the trilogy. You don't need to spoon feed us everything about characters anymore, especially because they are strong characters and I am invested in their relationships. I just feel like in this book, Maas didn't know whether or not her readers were smart or they were stupid. And I don't think she knew exactly where to go with the fantasy stuff, which I think that contributed to a lot of it, because she really was just talking about the relationship stuff. But because you're right, she's writing to a mainstream audience, maybe she felt like she needed to dumb it down a little bit more than she had in the past, or maybe I'm just noticing all this stuff now. But it did feel so repetitive. I think this book could have been cut down at the very least 50 pages, but maybe 100, maybe 100 plus. It is a long book. It was over 700 pages, which it's a doorstop fantasy. It's considered a doorstop fantasy. I think it could have done with a little bit more editing, which is not something I normally say because I'm not an editor. I don't even know what that entails. But that really did bother me. But going back to the positives, like I said, the relationship stuff, the character stuff, the foundation of that is all there. I do think it's a missed opportunity that Tamlin and Feyre didn't have a hash it out session, a proper one, other than just him being angry and her being like, oh, I can't even look at him. And even at the end, I think Lucien was great in the first quarter of the book. I love him as a character, but he kind of just disappears. And even at a moment between him and Tamlin, I think Tamlin was underused. However, the fact that I felt such visceral reactions to Tamlin interacting with Rhys and Feyre is a sign that there is substance in this book. And like I said at the very beginning of the video, I do want to read the spin-offs. I think that's a testament to the world that's created and the characters. I'm just not interested in the big battles. I'm not interested in the Avengers-like moment at the end of the book as well, where it's like We're fighting the big bad, so every character we've ever mentioned ever is going to appear out of the woodwork, including Fairy's father. And guess what? He wasn't just a deadbeat. He actually was summoned the armies. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. And then he just dies immediately. No, he didn't. That didn't happen. That's so stupid. If one thing you could say, oh, Lucian found him, and then his dad gave him a bunch of money because he's the money guy, but he tries to be a warrior and immediately just uses a human shield. I was trying to compliment it. I just ended up finding the more things I was mad about. But I thought that was really stupid. But overall, I thought it was fine. I thought it was fun. I think that I was just harsher on this book because I wanted it to be as fun or as good as I thought I was having in this series. But it was a step down. But it was fine. I can see why people like it. I see why people love it, in fact. It's just not a great fantasy book, and for a romance book, it's pretty good. I'll say that. I'll say that for really as a synthesis of the entire series. Fantasy book, it's okay at best, if not rough moments. Oh, and what I was gonna wrap this up, but one more thing, guys. One of the most stupid parts of this book. So, for those of you that haven't read the series at all, I don't know why you stuck around for 25 minutes, but there's a character that's basically like a goblin of the woods. Well, actually, there's many goblins of the woods, right? But there's one that like Fairy meets in every single book. She traps him, and he like tells her the truth or something. He's like a magical fairy creature. Sounds like it would exist in this world, right? In the first book, she captures him. He's like, let me go. I'll tell you the truth. In the second book, she captures him because she's like, you saved my life last time. I will give you the truth. And off we go. And he like disappears in like his Lucky Charm world. In the third book, he dies. Okay? And like he literally just dies. And then there's like the most emotional moment for Fairy where she's like, no, not the Goblin of the Woods. He died too young. Like he's literally a beast. Like he's a creature of the night. Like he'd rip out your throat if he had teeth. And then it'd be like, there's a moment where he's like laying there and he goes like, Fairy, one more thing. Leave the world better than you found it. And then Fairy's like, and then I realized he was a dreamer. That's not the vibe I got. I got Goblin of the Woods vibe. I got he only tells you the truth because you trapped him 3 times. And the fact that like his death is supposed to be this big sacrifice, it's just, she was trying too hard to make this like a culmination book. Oh, it's all the characters working together. It's happiness and harmoniousness. But let me just tell you that the Goblin of the Woods was not a dreamer. He was a Goblin of the Woods, right? And his death was a waste of 5 pages. He should not have been thought of. He should not have even appeared in this book except for a little camera where he goes, good job, lass. Back to my goblining of the woods. And also all the waste with the bone carver and all the creatures that she make deals with. It's like, I don't know. Things in the second book that took her so long. It's like, oh, we're gonna meet the bone carver. Dun dun dun. Traveling through the snow. Oh, it's so cold. You can't fly here. In the second book or the third book, she visits him like 7 times without even a word about her journey there. I guess to save his time, but it's also like, well, maybe he's not that big of a deal then. Especially because he gets incinerated. Spoiler! Obviously, I'm conflicted. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. I feel like this one was all over the place. I don't even know what was going on. I got strong feelings, though. But I don't hate the book. I don't hate the book, guys, even though I'm fired up about it. Let me know what you guys think about this book. Is the spin-off more like this? Is it more like this, guys? Or is it more like the good stuff? Is it more like relationship, drama, juiciness, stuff you can sink your teeth into? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and want to see more like in the future. And as always, thanks for sticking around.